June, eh? What a month. You got your long days, your warm evenings, and perhaps most importantly, WWDC. Yes, Apple just held their 2023 Worldwide Developer Conference, an opportunity for the company to show off all their new software and occasionally new hardware too. It's been a part of my yearly ritual for quite a while now to download the beta software that they always release, pretty much as soon as it's available. And so why not use this as an opportunity to show you guys what's coming in a couple months to your phone, Mac, iPad, TV, and maybe even your head. This is the One About WWDC. Let's start with iOS. Unlike last year's iOS 16, which brought big new changes to the lock screen, 17 is a much more small-scale update. There's a lot of small changes to a bunch of different parts of the OS that, when added together, make for a pretty decently sized update, but there's nothing as immediately present as new lock screen, widgets, cool colors and photos and things like last year. Standby mode is probably the thing that stands out the most at first glance. Plug in your iPhone, turn it on its side, and you'll be greeted with a selection of fancy little clocks or different widgets or music or photos that basically turn your phone into a Google Home. This feature seems designed for the iPhone 14 Pro since, as it has the always on display, standby mode will be always on, whereas on other devices you have to tap the screen every time you want to see it, which kind of defeats the point, I think. I don't know why they can't just have it stay on for every other device, because literally every iPhone now has an OLED screen, and if it's plugged into power, it's not going to be losing any power, so I don't get it. You can set it to show pretty much any of the little square widgets and have two side by side, but I think the clock faces designed specifically for standby mode look the best and kind of make the most sense since they show you time, weather and alarms, and then every time you get a notification it pops up in the middle. When the phone's camera detects that it's dark in the room, the screen goes into this nice red and black mode, which means that it won't be waking you up at night time, which is definitely appreciated. The phone app has been redesigned in the same vein as the iOS 16 lock screen, so you can have a customized contact sheet for every single person in your phone book. AirPods have gained the ability to kind of fuse transparency and noise cancelling to make this kind of ideal hear some things but not everything mode, which I haven't been able to test out yet. You can use your iPhone as a FaceTime camera for your Apple TV, which, who asked for that? I don't know. And iMessage stickers can be used in pretty much any app, which I think's fun because iMessage stickers are kind of fun, I guess. One of the areas Apple always seems to spend a lot of time on in these keynotes is the Health app, and this year mental health got brought to the forefront. You can now use your iPhone to log your daily state of mind. This isn't really something that appeals to me, but for someone that cares about this kind of stuff, I feel like being able to keep a chart of every single kind of daily emotion could be kind of useful, especially combined with the journaling app that's supposed to come later in the year, but that's not available in the beta, so I've not been able to look at that yet. It sends you a notification kind of randomly to ask you if you want to log your state of mind, which I have turned off because it got a bit annoying. But it went off in the pub once and my co-workers said I was having a brave, hopeless, peaceful, proud and relieved day, which I don't know what that means. The fact that it can also compare it alongside loads of other data that your iPhone already collects, like time in the sunlight or exercise minutes from your Apple Watch, could be pretty useful for someone that does take this seriously. But like I said, I don't. So yeah, it's not been a massive year for iOS, and unfortunately this whole not a massive year thing kind of continues with the rest of the updates. iPadOS 17. Stage Manager isn't awful anymore because it works slightly more like a Mac. Windows don't just kind of get moved around by the iPad and put wherever it feels like you might want them. Now you just move the windows like you would on a normal computer. I mean, who'd have thought that a multitasking system designed to emulate a Mac would work better if you just let it work more like a Mac? Crazy. The widgets on the home screen are now interactive, something that the iPhone also now gets this year. And the lock screen from last year on the iPhone finally comes to the iPad. You get all the same cool astronomy wallpapers and like the Pride ones and the Unity ones and the Kaleidoscope ones. Basically get everything that the iPhone has just a year late. You can put a big row of widgets along the side, you can have a big clock up here with another big widget above it. It's cool and I'm glad it's here, but I don't know why it took so long, so I'm not really praising them for just doing something they should have done last year. What's most annoying is what's not here. Standby mode sort of makes sense on the iPhone, but I feel like it would make so much more sense on the huge screen of the iPad. I mean, look at the Pixel tablet. That thing's whole selling point is you put it on its dock and it becomes a smart home hub. The iPhone can become a smart home hub, but the big screen tablet that Apple sells can't do that. I mean, I guess we know what'll be the headlining feature of iPadOS 18, but it just kind of sucks knowing I'm going to have to wait a year for something that I can already do slightly worse on my iPhone. That's just the way iPadOS works nowadays. PDFs also got a little bit smarter in the Notes app, which would have been very useful 6 months ago when I was doing English A-level, because I used to just live in PDFs, but now my iPad basically just kind of gets used to watch movies. Other small changes include the Health app coming to iPad, the ability to use external webcams, and a smarter spotlight search. Not a huge year for the iPad. While nothing beyond the lock screen sort of sounds or looks very flashy, the fact that Apple seems to be finally sort of taking the iPad seriously as a computer, Stage Manager works a bit now, and they've added pro apps like Final Cut, look at that, to the iPad, means that it's getting slightly easier to be that guy stubbornly insisting he can work only on his iPad. That guy was me for quite a while. However, there still is no native calculator app, and so I will be selling my iPad and buying a MacBook. macOS Sonoma feels like the third nothing year for the Mac since Big Sur came in and just changed everything. The same iPhone-style widgets have been living in macOS since 2020, but they've just been unshackled from the awful notification center you probably never touch, and you can put them on your desktop. Yay! This isn't really an entirely new feature. Widgets sort of existed in OS X's dashboard thing before they got taken away in macOS Catalina, maybe? I don't remember. But yeah, they're back now, and they work pretty well. You can also stream widgets from your iPhone, which means that you can have, your lovely Snapchat memories gallery with this weird picture of a million Alfies, or local Deliveroo orders that are popular appearing on your desktop, because, why wouldn't you want that? Also, I was playing around with the widgets and found out that if you have a full desktop of items and put a widget near one of them, all of them do this and freak out, and it looks really funny and really broken. So hopefully it gets fixed by September. The lock screen got changed to look a lot more like an iPad, which, to be honest, I don't really like. It also only shows the Cupertino time in the beta, which is not very useful. And there's all these cool new dynamic wallpapers that kind of look the same as the Apple TV screensaver flyover animations. They move while the computer's locked, you unlock it, and then they gracefully come to a stop and create a slightly different wallpaper each time. They're very cool to look at, but they are huge files for what they are, so I wouldn't recommend just downloading a bunch, and they probably also use up quite a lot more battery than just a static wallpaper, so maybe only use one or two. Apple's also introduced a whole load of new collaboration options that feel like they would have been really useful a couple of years ago when I was doing school at COVID. Now I'm just not in school, so they're extra useless now. There's this cool new presenter overlay mode where you can put a video of yourself in front of your desktop window, either as a little guy in a circle or a big guy pointing at his PowerPoint. And then you can also do these fun little animated reactions. You do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You can show everyone how excited you are about their team's presentation, or how sad it makes you feel. The use your iPhone as a webcam feature that probably doesn't get any use outside of Apple Park is supposedly a little better this year, but I can't get it to work on any Mac I've tried it with. So as far as I'm concerned, it still sucks. This year is theoretically one of the biggest years for watchOS ever. Glances are back from watchOS 2, now in the form of widgets. So when you scroll up from the watch face, you get this list of shrunk down iPhone widgets or slightly blown up Apple Watch complications. It's pretty useful because it means that you can use the super simplistic watch faces like these ones, but still have quick access to all the information you could usually jam into something like Infograph. This now means that the side button summons Control Center instead of an app switcher, because, swiping up doesn't do that anymore. But I don't think that really matters that much, because I'm not one to multitask too often on the tiny little watch screen, so I don't really know who else does. A lot of the default apps still feel like they were designed with the tiny little 30-something millimeter screens on the original Apple Watch, and they've now been remade to fit the big screens of the new ones, so they're all full color, they go right out to the edge and fill the screen with a lot more information, which does make things like the weather app quite a bit more useful. There's two new watch faces, the kind of odd-looking palette, and perhaps most importantly out of everything Apple announced this year, one with Snoopy on it. Cycling also got the same level of attention that running got last year. You can now sync your watch up with a power meter on your bike to see the kind of Peloton-like power metrics that you might be used to if you have one of those. You can get a live activity that pops up on your phone every time you start a cycling workout, which means that you can see a big speedo or your heart rate or all the other kind of data that your Apple Watch is collecting that might be kind of hard to, glance at while you're riding a bike. As long as you have a phone mount, now you can just see it right in front of your face, which is definitely a cool thing to have. So yeah, a pretty small year in terms of updates. There are definitely some cool features that make it worth downloading them when they roll around in September, October, November-y time, but I wouldn't say there's anything worth rushing out and downloading a beta right now. All you're really going to get is worse battery life and worse performance and some cool stuff, but it's not worth it. There was one big announcement at this year's DubDub, a certain VR AR headset that looks a little bit like this, but I think the Vision Pro is a big enough deal that it's worth talking about in its own video, where I can show you some of the software experience and talk about some of the things that I think are pretty cool and pretty weird from the perspective of someone that's spent a decent amount of time using VR headsets. But yeah, that was WWDC 2023. See you in the next one.